Namaskar. Welcome to the episode on tourism in Australia, Part 1. Hello viewers. Welcome to the series of lectures on tourism in Australia. This topic has been divided into two parts. In Part 1, we are discussing about the 5 subtopics. In this unit, we shall be learning about tourism in Australia through the following subtopics: Introduction, History at a glance, Geographical features of popular tourist regions, Climate and tourism, and then the culture and ethnicity of Australia. Introduction. Australia is the smallest continent in the world, situated in the southeastern hemisphere of Earth between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Commonwealth of Australia is made out of mainland, and the island state of Tasmania to the south makes Australia a federal parliamentary state. Australia's capital is Canberra, but its largest city is Sydney. In tourism geography, Australia has been divided into several regions which are rich in tourism resources: Western Australia, Northern Australia, Southern Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria Island State, Tasmania, and the Australian Capital Territory, which is an enclave within New South Wales containing Canberra. Australia owns number of overseas territories including Norfolk Island, Christmas Island, the Cocos, that is Keeling Islands, and the Australian Antarctic Territory. Australia is also called Down Under because the whole continent lies south of the equator. All different climates exist in the world are found in this continent, from the tropical rainforest in the north to the cool and temperate climates to the south and southeast. British discovered Australia in 1788 once it became British colony. People from Great Britain settled here. In the past decades, people from all over the world have come and settled in Australia, making Australia a multicultural society. Australians enjoy a high standard of living, being one of the richest countries in the world. It produces wool and meat on one side, as well as gold, bauxite, and other minerals on the other. Facts and figures about the country. Total area 7.692 million square kilometer. Population 20,351,000, that is 23 million as per 2014 statistics. Capital city Canberra. Largest city Sydney. Currency Australian dollar AUD. International dialing code +61. Language English, native languages. Life expectancy 80 years. GDP per capita is $26,900 US. Total tourist arrival is 6.6 million. International visitors according to the annual report of Tourism Australia 2013-14. History at a glance. The history of Australia has been discussed in several stages which refer to the history of area and people of the Commonwealth of Australia and its indigenous and colonial societies. The groups of Aborigines have migrated from Southeast Asia to Australia more than 40,000 to 70,000 years ago through sea. The Aborigines spread throughout Australia and remained relatively isolated until the arrival of the Europeans. They lived in groups by doing occupations like hunting and fishing. The religion followed was called as dreaming, and the artistic, musical and spiritual traditions they established are still surviving in Australian society. As per the available evidences, the first known landing in Australia was by Dutch navigator Willem Janszoon in 1606. In 17th century, 29 other Dutch navigators explored the western and southern coast of Australia and named the land as New Holland. The first British arrival to Australia was by James Cook, landed in Botany Bay, that is the present-day Sydney, and brought Botany Bay and New South Wales into Great Britain colonization. In 1788, fleet of 11 British ships arrived at Botany Bay carrying 1,500 people, whereas half of them were convicts from Britain and their colonies. In 1788, the first British settlement established the penal colony and continued establishing other colonies in the continent. Australia has been used for longer period by the British as a dumping ground for criminals, bankrupts and other undesirables from the British Islands. These convicts gradually started farming, sheep raising in the land allotted by the government. In the middle of the 19th century, wheat was being exported in large quantities to England. European explorers' entry into interior part of Australia made the indigenous Australians weakened and started diminishing in numbers due to diseases and conflict with the colonists during this period. Major rush to the region was at the time of gold strike in Victoria in 1851. With minerals, sheep and grain forming the base of the economy, Australia developed rapidly. By 19th century, British-led colonies brought prosperity by gold mining and agricultural export. Modern Australia. By the 19th century, native-born Australians shown their interest in democracy and nationalism gradually developed among them. The colonies voted for referendum to untie into a federation. Confederation of the separate Australian colonies did not come until a constitution drafted in 1897-98 was approved by the British Parliament in 1900. It was put into operation in 1901 and modern Australia came into existence. Under its terms, the colonies of New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia and Tasmania, all of which had by then been granted self-government, were federated in the Commonwealth of Australia. The Northern Territory was added to the Commonwealth in 1911. Australia fought in 2 world wars on the side of Britain and became the ally of United States in World War II. Recent past Australia experienced tremendous economic growth and people migrated from more than 200 countries. By 2014, Australia has become the 12th largest economy in the world with a population of almost 23 million. Geographical features of popular tourist regions. Location and geography. Australia is an island continent in the southern hemisphere, lying between Antarctica and Asia. Australia is surrounded by the Indian Ocean to the west, the Timor, Arafura and Coral Seas to the north, the Pacific Ocean to the east and the Tasman Sea and Southern Ocean to the south. Australia has 6 states, namely Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, Tasmania, New South Wales and Queensland, and 2 territories, that is the Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory, whose capital cities are respectively Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Hobart, Sydney, Brisbane, Darwin and Canberra. The majority of the population lives in urban areas around the coast. Australia has been divided into 3 major geographical regions. Most of Australia is flat. The highest part of the country lies in the east. 3 big regions are as follows: the Great Dividing Range or Eastern Highlands, the Central Lowlands, the Western Plateau. The Eastern Highlands are the highest parts of the continent with high altitude mountains in the continent. This region is also called the Great Dividing Range because the rivers that flow down the eastern slopes empty in the ocean and the rivers that run down the western slopes flow into the central lowlands and dry up there. The highest peaks can be found in the Australian Alps in the southern part of the Great Dividing Range. They are covered with snow in winter and many Europeans go there to ski during summer months. Mount Kosciuszko on the Great Dividing Range is the highest mountain on the Australian mainland. The major concentration of Australia's population is in Eastern Highlands. Popular tourist places are also situated in this region along with beautiful natural tourist destinations. Some of the Australia's popular cities like Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Brisbane, Gold Coast and Cairns are situated in the Eastern Highlands. Another most important tourist attraction of Australia is the Great Barrier Reef, the world's largest coral reef, and lies a short distance off the northeast coast and extends for over 2,000 square kilometers. The central lowlands consist of very flat plains and portion of deserts along with Western Plateau. Rivers flow through this region during rainy season, but during the summer, the riverbeds are mostly dry. In the southern part of the lowlands has some unique grasslands where the grass gets high enough for farmers to raise cattle and sheep. Wheat is often grown here. In the northern part of the lowlands, it gets drier and it is usually too hot to dry to grow crops. The region is not very populated and only has a few small towns. Some of the popular tourist places in this region are Great Victoria Desert, Uluru, Kakadu National Park in the north of this region, Adelaide and Kangaroo Island in the south. The Western Plateau is a large area, covers about 2/3 of Australia. It is higher in elevation than the central lowlands. Most of it is made up of large deserts. This region receives very less rainfall. Rain only falls in the northeastern and southwestern parts of Western region. Western Australia is not so popular like Eastern and Southeastern Australia in terms of tourism and tourist arrival, but it has some unique tourist spots like Mount Augustus National Park, claimed to be the world's largest monolith, Perth City and Nullarbor Plain. Australia has very unique and wide variety of landscapes even though it is a small continent in the world. With tropical rainforests in the northeast to mountain ranges in the southeast, southwest and east and dry desert in the center, the driest inhabited continent, its annual rainfall averaged over continental area is less than 500 mm. The population density, 2.8 inhabitants per square kilometer, is among the lowest in the world, although a large proportion of the population lives among the temperate southeastern coastline. Tourism and major tourist activities are also centered in eastern and southeastern region of Australia. Next, coming to climate and tourism. The climate of Australia is very diverse. Australia experiences temperate weather for most of the year, but climate can vary due to its large size and different geographical features in it. The northern states experience warm and dry weather most of the time, whereas southern states experience cool winter. The average annual rainfall is less than 600 mm, making Australia one of the driest continents on earth after Antarctica. The climate of eastern, southeastern and southwestern Australia is temperate and more favourable for tourist activities. Australia can be divided into 6 climatic zones and 4 seasons like summer, autumn, winter and spring. Australia, situated in the south of equator, seasons in Australia are opposite to countries or continents in northern hemisphere. Summer is between December to February, autumn March to May, winter is between June to August and spring is between September to November. Climatic zones. Australia mainly has features of 4 climatic zones as follows. The temperate zone, New South Wales, much of Victoria, Tasmania, the southeastern corner of South Australia and the southwest of Western Australia. Equatorial, the tip of Cape York and Bathurst and Melville Islands and north of Darwin. Tropical, across northern Australia including Cape York, the top end of the Northern Territory. Land south of the Gulf of Carpentaria and the Kimberley region. Subtropical, the coastal and inland fringe from Cairns along the Queensland coast and hinterland to the northern areas of New South Wales and the coastal fringe north of Perth to Geraldton in Western Australia. Temperature. The temperature can range from below zero in the Snowy Mountains in southern Australia to extreme heat in the Kimberley region in the northwest of the continent. Temperature in the southern capital cities like Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Hobart, Adelaide and Perth come under the temperature zone is moderate throughout the year. The average temperatures in these cities range from minimum 16 to maximum 26 degrees Celsius in summer and minimum 6 to maximum 14 degrees Celsius in winter. The average temperature in the subtropic and tropical cities like Brisbane, Darwin, Cairns and Alice is ranging from 20 to 32 degrees Celsius. Summer heat waves and sea temperature. Since the 1950s, there is a rise in the average temperature in Australia. Global warming and climate change has affected in the rise of 1 degree Celsius in the temperature and 2 degrees Celsius in sea temperature. Extreme weather, cyclones, snow and floods. The tropics are affected by the extremes of cyclones in the wet season and the inland deserts can remain totally dry for years whilst rains can produce floods. The wettest months in the southern capitals are from May to July. Along the Great Dividing Range, the mountain range that passes through New South Wales and Victoria, there are regular winter snowfalls. The snow season in the Alps in southeastern Australia is June to September. Coming to culture and ethnicity of Australia. Australia is a multicultural and multi-ethnic country. The culture of Australia is mostly influenced by the Western culture and diverse input of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. British colonization on Australia brings multi-ethnic migration to this continent. The predominance of the English language, parliamentarianism and constitutional monarchy, American constitutionalist and federalist traditions, Christianity as the dominant religion and the popularity of sports originating in or influenced by the British Isles are all evidence of a significant Anglo-Celtic heritage. Australian culture has diverged significantly since British settlement. Coming to the symbols. Union flag of the country symbolizing Australia's historical links to the United Kingdom, the stars of the Southern Cross on the right half of the flag indicating Australia's geographical location and the 7-pointed Federation star in the bottom left representing the 6 states and the territories of Australia. Other official flags include the Australian Aboriginal flag, the Torres Strait Islander flag and the flags of the individual states and territories. Language. English is most commonly spoken language in Australia. Although Australia has no official language, it is largely monolingual, with English being the de facto national language. Australian English is a major variety of the language which is immediately distinguishable from British, American and other national dialects or by virtue of its unique accents, pronunciations, idioms and vocabulary, although its spelling more closely reflects British versions rather than the American. Small portion of population speaks other languages like Mandarin 1.7%, Italian 1.5% and Arabic 1.4%. It is believed that before the arrival of British to Australia, there were between 200 to 300 Australian Aboriginal languages, but only about 70 of these have survived and almost 20 languages are identified now as endangered. Architecture. Architecture is majorly influenced by European colonization. Georgian architecture can be seen in early era of building construction. British arrival to Australia and their rule has been contributed in the construction of buildings and monuments in Victorian architecture in several major cities like Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Hobart and regional cities such as Ballarat and Bendigo. Other significant architectural movements in Australian architecture include the Federation style at the turn of the 20th century and the modern styles of the late 20th century, which also saw many older buildings demolished. The Queenslander is a term which denotes the primary residential style of warm climate architecture developed in Queensland and northern parts of New South Wales. Religious architecture is also prominent throughout Australia, with large Anglican and Catholic cathedrals in every major city and Christian churches in most towns. Sydney's Gothic style Great Synagogue was consecrated in 1878. Australia has 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in the name of Australian convict sites. Sydney Opera House is a marvellous piece of modern architecture. Harbour Bridge, Royal Exhibition Building in Melbourne, Parliament House in Canberra are the best architectural buildings to watch in Australia. Australia is very rich with visual and performing arts, films, music, painting, theatre dance and craft. Australia is richest continent in terms of prehistoric art named as dot painting and also home for Aboriginal rock art. Indigenous music is integral part of the Aboriginal culture. Famous wooden instrument used is didgeridoo. This wooden instrument, used amongst the Aboriginal tribes of Northern Australia, makes a distinctive droning sound and it has been adopted by a wide variety of non-Aboriginal performers. Folk music is also practiced in Australian societies. Western influence can be seen on modern music in Australia. Now next coming to religion. Australia has no official state religion and the Australian Constitution prohibits the Commonwealth Government from establishing a church or interfering with the freedom of religion. According to the 2006 Australian census, 63.9% of Australians were listed as Christian. Australians have freedom to announce themselves as non-religion, with 18.7% of Australians declaring no religion on the census. There are also growing communities of various other religions in Australia due to migration from all over the world. Cuisine. Contemporary Australian cuisine combines British and indigenous origins with Mediterranean and Asian influences. Australia's abundant natural resources allow access to a large variety of quality meats, and to barbecue beef or lamb in the open air is considered a cherished national tradition. Australian cuisine includes the use of locally available ingredients termed as bush tucker. Bush tucker refers to wide variety of plant and animal food native to the Australian bush, such as fruits like kakadu plums, finger limesand desert, marine food like fish and shellfish, bushmeat like emu and kangaroo. Australia is the largest producer of milk and milk products, so the use of dairy products can also be seen in the cuisines of Australia.